Is someone listening to all your calls or reading your text messages? How about your computer? Is someone watching all your keystrokes? Or do you want to know what your child, your employee, or your spouse are doing on a computer or cell phone? If you need computer or cell phone forensics, do what I do. Talk to Steve Abrams at abramsforensics.com. Steve is a highly respected and skilled forensics expert as well as an attorney. Contact Steve Abrams for a free 15-minute consultation at abramsforensics.com. That's abramsforensics.com, or click on the Abrams Forensics banner ad on Hear Women Talk and use promo code HWT.
Hi, this is Judy Collins from Judy's House of Oldies, and you're listening to Hear Women Talk Radio on the Zeus Radio Network. Police Psychics, find me.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Kelly Snyder with Valerie Graham. We're talking today, going over a little bit of a repeat, but more in-depth repeat of what the Find Me group is all about. And Valerie, we were discussing some of the ins and outs on how I got started doing what I'm doing, and then
you kind of moved on to the children,
yeah.
the missing children, and
right.
We had a question from the chat room from Kay. Please ask Kelly, as a former law enforcement officer, what are your feelings about personal GPS devices to be used on children?
Well, you know what? I absolutely love the idea, and I have heard this for quite a few years. Quite frankly, I've heard it from all different types of people, and one day my son actually even brought it up. Is there a way to do this to where the child has this with them each and every time? And I would actually love to see this, and of course my thoughts were, you probably shouldn't or you couldn't embed the device in the child's body, but certainly there are certain aspects of clothing that could have the device put on them. But what everyone needs to understand is the criminals out there, they're aware of a lot of these things, and so it has to be something that would be useful in that regard. And handing every child a cell phone back 2, 3, 4 years ago was a really neat way of making a system to where you had communication. But once that cell phone is gone from the child, then of course you lose your GPS to where you can't ping the phone to find out where the child is on, assuming of course that the phone is turned on in the first place. So
sure.
I think the idea is incredibly good. I would love to see someone, maybe even myself, come up with an idea on how to do this. But certainly, regardless of the price, it would be worth it if you can save one child. So figuring out the device and figuring out the cost, and then having some kind of a system to where it can be taken care of by the private sector, and or heaven forbid the government gets involved in it. But even if that's the case,
yes.
Well, who cares who pays for it, other than right now with what's going on, where's the money going to come from? But
sure,
I think it's something that really does need to be explored.
Well, then that was certainly a good question. Another question from Nancy was, the John Benet Ramsey case, although not officially a missing child case by any means, and so bizarre, has Kelly or any of the other psychics worked on that case?
Well, our group did not adopt the case, and one of the protocols that we established in our second year with the group was that we would not ambulance chase any case that had, major media involvement, but more importantly, we had to be invited in on an investigation either by the family and or the police. And one of our members did work on the case, but from a professional level, Actually, it was Tracy Montoya who worked on the case, but the results of her handwriting really needs to stay within the scope of what the police have under their investigation.
Yes,
so,
yes.
I mean, I'd love to talk about it because I know what she discovered, but it's just something that needs to be dealt with the police.
Well, another question before we get back to some of the extraordinary people who populate Find Me. A question from Kay. If a 20-year-old woman has been missing for 4 years and is a suspected trafficking victim, is that a case Find Me would take if asked?
Absolutely. And again, it would have to be because the police are involved, and we'll accept almost any type of a case as long as the police are asking us to get involved. We haven't been asked to do rape or bank robberies or anything of that nature, but it's not to say that we wouldn't do it. It's just I don't want to ever lose focus of the fact that, you know, we started the organization to work on missing children. That evolved into missing adults, and then, of course, a lot of the missing people that we were trying to find ended up in homicides, so then we evolved into the homicide portion of the, you know, what we're doing. But it just seems like, you know, I don't want to get, you know, so far removed from what our original purpose was, and let's face it, I think I gave the figure a couple months ago, but there's 180,000 plus missing people just in the United States.
Whoa.
And that doesn't include homicides, so you know, people that are missing that were probably killed, or, you know, based on the facts surrounding the case, it appears that they were either murdered or came upon with some foul play, or was a horrendous accident. No one knows. But in answer to Kay's question, the answer is yes, we'll work on anything that the police want our involvement in.
She asked a secondary question, which was, how hard is it for a family to get the police to ask?
Well, it really depends on the size of the department and whether or not they're willing to take on a cold case. Now, if they are the original investigative authority and they have jurisdiction over the case, obviously they can work it as long as they want and stay involved in the investigation. The key component is, will they accept our information, and if they will accept it, what will they do with it? It has to make sense to them. You know, if I am giving them information that the person that's missing is in Italy, and then are they going to go to the trouble to involve Interpol and, you know, the Italian authorities, and on and on and on, based on psychic information? You know, if it was me, would I do it? Absolutely. But you can't convince every police department and every investigative authority that you know, it's a wise move. So it really depends on the initiative of the family, number one, and then number two, whether or not the police department can afford to have their people working on a case of that magnitude.
Well, MJ asked an appropriate question. How far will your dog teams go?
Well, we've been invited to Japan, so I guess that answers that question. We'll go anywhere. I mean, one of the things I did want to come up with today and talk about it a tiny bit, so this is a great opportunity, is we'll go anywhere. It doesn't matter. We'll go anywhere in the world because our dogs are the best of the best out there anyway. But what I wanted to say is this takes money, and we don't charge families for anything that we do. There's absolutely no charge for any of our experts. Everything that we do is basically out of our pockets, but we can't, you know, obviously go to Japan out of our own money. The one time we did work for a Japanese television station, they took us to Oklahoma City to find a Japanese national, and I mentioned that on one of the shows previously. But as long as our airfare and you know, our hotel is covered, or, you know, they find us a place to sleep, we'll pretty much go anywhere. I mean, it's
and you have.
Oh, pretty much, yeah. We've been to Anacortes twice this year. We went to McCleary, Oregon, to look for Lindsey Baum, and the Anacortes trip, we went twice with our dogs, and that was to find the body of Mark Stover, who was a dog trainer, and of course we are fairly confident that the body was dumped in the water there in the Sound, and we had a very, very solid alert from our dogs, but with all the currents and the depth of the water, and if in fact this guy dismembered the body, these body parts are going to be moving within the water based on the currents, so it's very difficult. It's not to say that the body isn't down there where our dogs alerted, but we did put a couple of very professional divers in the water. We didn't have any luck finding him, but that doesn't mean he's not down there.
You have a number of very fascinating cases that have been of late. I know the Ed Hatfield case was an interesting one.
Yeah, that one, actually it was one of we had maybe 2 successes prior to Ed Hatfield coming into the picture, and the reason I like to use that case as an example is when we got the request from the family, it revolved around the finding out exactly where he was, because he could have been anywhere in the world at this point. He had been missing for, I think, 7 or 8 days at that point. And at the time that we took the case and accepted the case, they hadn't found his truck. But just prior to going on one of our searches, the family found out through the state police, the DPS here, Department of Public Safety, that the truck was found on I-17. Well, the psychics had already reported that he was deceased, and that his body, they made a comment that he had committed suicide, and that he was only 350 yards. Some said a half mile, some said a quarter of a mile in a southeast direction from I-17. And once we found the truck, then we felt fairly confident we were in the right area. So we took our Canine Corps up there and Arizona Search, Track, and Rescue, and on the first go-round we didn't find his body, but we had a late start that day. The temperature was really hot, and those, heat is a factor that works against not only the scent, but heat works against the dogs just because of the amount of breaks they have to take. So sure, we decided to delay the search and went back a couple days later, actually on Mother's Day, which was not so great for his mother, but we went back on Mother's Day, and literally within 45 minutes after we sent out the first dog team, they had an alert, and about 15 minutes later actually discovered him approximately 350 yards. Hard to believe, but 350 yards from where the truck was found, and where we were originally going in the first place. But it was, it was great because it was full circle. It was family and police involvement. Psychics get involved, say where the individual was located, and then we get our search dogs involved, and then they find him within an hour after we started the search.
So it was perfect teamwork on that occasion.
Yeah, the sad part, of course, is we found Ed deceased, but we did bring closure to the family and his fiancée, and from that perspective, it was a successful day.
Well, now you have found people alive, have you not?
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
Tell us a little about that.
Well, Fred Hill was the first one. He was missing from Scottsdale, Arizona, and the police would not get involved just because he was an adult. The only issue where they probably should have been involved was he had some medical issues and should have been taking his medication, but for whatever reason they decided not to, and end result was they gave it to our group. The family found us, and this was something where we had to do something quickly, so make a very long story short, the psychics came up that he was located in San Francisco in the Mission District, which made sense to the family because he used to live there. The twin brother went to San Francisco and showed his picture around on the street in the